A man was convicted of raping and killing an 18-year-old Amanda Stavik, and this was based on DNA evidence that was found on a plastic cup of coke. This happened almost 30 years after the crime, when Amanda's body was found in a river after she went missing while jogging with her dog. In November 1989, Amanda Stavik, she disappeared after leaving her home in Acme in Washington. Her body was discovered 3 days later in the South Fork of the Nooksack River, which then turned this case into a murder investigation. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Joel Onuk, and hi, welcome back to True Crime Joel. If this is your first time stopping by, hi, welcome, and I'm very happy that you decided to watch my video. If you're not subscribed, kindly subscribe to my video, like this video if you care, comment. I would love to see more comments on what you think about this case and what you think about my presentation, because girl, I'm still learning. And yeah, let's just get right into this video. So guys, today we are going to talk about a girl called Amanda Stavik. Hopefully I'm pronouncing the name well. Amanda Stavik, she grew up in a small town called Acme, and this town was close to the Canadian border. So here she lived with her parents and her sibling. She was also in school, and in her school she was a popular student. She was an athlete at a high school called Mount Baker. And here, not only was she a popular student, she actually used to participate in basketball, volleyball. She used to play the saxophone too. Also, she was skilled in Japanese, and she also did the sign language. On November 24th, 1989, Amanda, like every morning, she used to go out to jog in the neighborhood. And I think people actually knew she went out to jog. Like I said, this was like a very small town. So Amanda, she went on her usual jog in the neighborhood, and anytime she goes to jog, she used to go to jog. I said, that's it. Oh yeah, she used to go to jog with her dog called Kyra. So on this day, on November 24th, 1989, she went for her usual jog in the neighborhood with her dog Kyra. Only thing is that this dog returned home and Amanda was never seen again. So when the dog returned home without Amanda, her family became very worried, because every time she goes for her jog, she comes back with her dog. So her family became worried when she didn't come back from her jog, and due to this, they decided to contact the authorities. So following the reports that her parents and her family made to the authorities, there was a large scale of search that was conducted, and the people that volunteered, there were so many that she had like hundreds of volunteers. They went, they searched the fields, they searched the woods, they were looking for Amanda. Then 3 days later, there was a man that was actually walking along the road, and this is where he saw Amanda's body. When he saw Amanda's body, Amanda was partially clothed and her body was in the Nooksack River. When the police had seen her body, they had come to the conclusion, they had done the investigation like around the body, and they found that she was sexually assaulted, she was drowned, and she had also suffered head injuries. An autopsy was conducted, and this autopsy also revealed that there was a presence of a male DNA that was on her body. And the police, the law enforcement, they tried so much. They had used so many of their efforts to find out who this person must have been. So despite all the exhaustive efforts that was carried out by law enforcement, including conducting so many interviews and like interrogating so many people, the sex offenders that live within and around the vicinity, this case remained unsolved for almost 30 years. There was no leads, there was no suspects that were actually identified in this case. In 2017, there was a breakthrough that actually happened in DNA analysis, and this finally led to the arrest of Amanda's killer, which actually did bring justice after decades of investigation. Years later, there were two ladies, Mary Lee Anderson and Heatherman Backstrom, who they went to the same high school. Like I said, this was like a small town, so like almost every one of them went to the same high school. So they went to the same high school, but the thing is that they really did not know each other very well. And here they met at the water park. They went because they're children, they were playing at the water park, so they really didn't know each other very well, but like they recognized each other because they went to the same high school. So as the children were playing, they just decided to just talk about things, and that's how the murder of Amanda Stavik came up. So as they were talking, they were surprised because they realized that Both of them claimed to know who the killer was. So to their surprise, both of them claimed to know who the killer was, and because they were intrigued, they shared their personal experience with a local man named Timothy Bass, and they suspected that Timothy Bass might have been involved in Amanda's murder. So Marilee Anderson, she actually recalled an incident that happened a few years after the murder, when Bass had come to her house and he claimed that he needed to make a phone call after he came back from a hunting trip. However, she noticed that when she gave him the phone that was actually not connecting and it was not working, and she just suspected that, yeah, this man is lying. So after that, Bass then entered her bedroom, and then he was making inappropriate advances towards her, and this actually made her very uncomfortable, of course, and then it also made her realize that Bass was also a predator. She managed to get him to leave because she actually threatened to call the police. So once she threatened to call the police, Bass decided to leave. So Heather Backstrom, as she was listening to Marilee, she had a similar encounter with Bass, because she said a few months after Amanda's murder, when she was only 15 years old, and Bass at this time, I think he was 21 years old, he started flirting aggressively with her in a truck, and this actually made her feel extremely uncomfortable. So after that incident, she actually avoided any contact with Bass in their small community. So as they were talking, they just realized how important their suspicions were, and that's so good, because if I sit down and then I talk to my friend about if something similar happened, I wouldn't think to involve or confirm or talk to a detective. But Marilee and Heather, they decided to inform a detective from the Whatcom Sheriff's Office about their concern regarding Tim Bass. So now I'm going to go a little bit into Tim Bass. So Tim Bass grew up in Acme, a small town near the Canadian border. He lived in the same neighborhood as Mandy and her family when she was murdered. At that time, Bass was 22 years old. Bass had a criminal history, including being convicted of burglary and assault. In 1986, 3 years before Mandy's death, he was actually found guilty of raping a 17-year-old girl in a nearby county called Skagit. After serving time in prison, Bass was released in 1989, the same year Mandy was killed. So during this period, Bass had several encounters with the police. He was arrested for drug possession, for theft, for assault. Moreover, multiple women, they actually filed so many restraining orders against him. They claimed that he had harassed them or he had actually threatened them. So when Mandy went missing, Bass, at this time, he was employed as a paper mill nearby, and investigators, they were actually aware of him for a long time, but they interrogated him, but they just did not find enough evidence to actually charge him to the crime. However, there was a new development, and then there was this genetic genealogy, and investigators, they were now able to use DNA evidence to track Timothy Bass' family lineage, and they led them to identify him as a suspect. So that's how they identified as a suspect, because obviously Mandy was raped, and because she was raped, she had DNA. The DNA of her rapist was actually taken from her. So because of this, they had used the genetic genealogy to find out the family lineage of the perpetrator, and it just led them to Tim Bass' family lineage. So this just made them identify him as a suspect, not only because of this, also because of his background. In 2017, Bass was actually married and he had 3 children, and here he worked as a delivery driver for a bakery. So when the police questioned him about Mandy, he acted suspiciously. He acted like he did not recognize or he did not remember her. This actually raised suspicions because everybody in the community, they actually knew who Mandy was. This was a very small community, but there's no way you can come out and say oh, you don't know who Mandy was. Mandy, literally, everybody knew who Mandy was, and obviously there were hundreds of people that actually went to look for her. So you cannot say you didn't know who Mandy was. So because he said this, the police, they were looking at him with side eye. They were everybody knows who Mandy was. Everybody knew who Mandy was. So the detective, his name was Detective Bohe. So he believed that Bass was lying because everybody knew that Mandy used to jog past his house every day. So it was unlikely for him to say, oh, he didn't know her. It was unlikely for him not to know her. So the police then asked Bass for his DNA, and he refused to give them his DNA. So because of this, the police were more suspicious, because they were okay, you claim you're innocent, you're not giving us your DNA. So they just told him straight up, they were see, we do not trust you, and you are the main suspect. So because he refused to give them his DNA, and they found some loopholes in his statement, they made him a prime suspect. So they could not do anything, even though he was a prime suspect, because they did not have his DNA. There was no proof or evidence that lead him directly to the case. So without his DNA evidence that proved that he was guilty, it was just going to be very challenging for the authorities to actually charge him. So they decided to seek assistance from one of Baz's colleagues at the bakery, and this woman, her name is Kim Wagner. So she eagerly offered her help in the investigation. She closely observed Timothy's action, and she noticed something suspicious. He always wore gloves whenever he was making deliveries, or like and anytime he had trash, like maybe he blew his nose or he was drinking, he would always make sure to take his trash home. That was very suspicious, honestly. One day, Kim actually witnessed Timothy drinking from a plastic cup and then throwing it away in the trash can. She just acted so quickly, and she retrieved the cup and then she kept it safe in her desk drawer. After this, she handed it over to the police, who sent it to the crime lab for analysis. So the results of the DNA test, they were actually very astonishing, because they actually showed that Baz's DNA was very, like, it was a direct match, and there was an extremely rare match to the DNA that was found at the crime scene. So according to the police, his DNA was actually linked to the murder through a genetic material that was found on Mandy's body. So the police also said that the odds of this match happening by any chance by any other person was like incredibly slim, and they actually estimated it to be 1 in 11 quadrillion. What the fuck is, I don't even know what the fuck that is. So they estimated it to be 1 in 11 quadrillion. So Baz was then confronted with the forensic evidence, and at first he denied that he was involved in the crime. He denied any involvement in the crime. However, he was so overwhelmed because of the investigation, and then they placed like the odds that were against him, and like they just showed him like all this evidence that they had against him. So because of this, he was really overwhelmed, and he just gave in, and he eventually confessed to raping and killing Amanda Stavik. He tried to suggest that he and Mandy, they had like a secret relationship, but investigators, they actually did not believe him because there was no evidence to actually support his claim. But after this, he was charged in connection to Mandy's death, and the case went to trial, and in 2019, he was actually found guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree rape and kidnapping. And as a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mandy's family, they actually finally found closure in their daughter's death, and justice was served, and the whole community, they were also deeply affected by the crime. So honestly, this is all I have for this case. But then again, there are like cases of, there were concerns of like privacy, and how to what far extent is it allowed for the investigators or for the authorities or for the police to like just think they can just take your DNA without you knowing, just like that, without you offering to actually give. But then again, what does it matter? Because this was used to solve the death of someone, the untimely death of a very beautiful and wonderful woman who like had a potentially bright future. So at this point, I don't think it really matters like that. Anyways, guys, that brings us to the end. Even though it took almost 30 years to apprehend Mandy's killer, the police actually showed how dedicated they were, to solving this case, and I'm actually glad that it helped alongside with the forensic techniques. So guys, thank you guys so much for stopping by. I know this is a short case. I have somewhere I have to be, and thank you guys so much for stopping by and for watching this video. If you're not subscribed, kindly subscribe to my channel, like this video. I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye guys. Please like, subscribe and comment if you like this video. It really means so much to me, and bye.